Mi ma'amakim keraticha, Adonai. Adonai shima v'koli. Out of the depths I call to you, O God. Adonai, hear my voice. From deep places of tumult and unknown, disruption and despair, we call out. These words from Psalm 130 resonate anew this year. Many of you lost loved ones, partners, parents, siblings, children, friends. Some died of COVID, some died of other illnesses. But regardless, everyone who has mourned since March has had to do so without overflowing Shiva gatherings and without the comfort of hugs from family and friends. And even we, the lucky ones, who did not bury a beloved, have lived with loss. The past 6 months have shaken just about everything that had previously felt firm and reliable. Our jobs, our schedules, our schools, our Jewish living, our relationships, our shared spaces, our control. Some days were harder to get through than others. We felt sad, unmotivated, angry, exhausted, lonely, and like we could never quite do enough to help our kids, to support our partners, to succeed at work, to protect our nearest and dearest from the virus and its associated aftershocks. We have felt, we still feel grief. On March 23rd, a Harvard Business Review article called "That Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief" made the rounds on social media. It's likely you saw it. I remember reading it sometime not too long after its publication. Remember the end of March, when it felt like we had already been living in this nightmare for an interminable period? It was only the beginning of this pandemic, but the experience of living through it had already set in. David Kessler, a man with the unusual reputation as the world's foremost expert on grief, is quoted in this article. He speaks of different kinds of grief. We experience general grief, that the world has changed and that our normal is, at least right now, no more. We feel collective grief, a shared and unsettling heaviness. We experience anticipatory grief, that feeling we get about what the future holds when we are uncertain. Kessler recommends that when our imaginations start to get the better of us, we turn to practices of mindfulness and meditation, focusing on this moment, what we see, what we feel, what we know is true right now. This brings us into the present. Then, he says, we need to try to let go of what we can't control. He urges us to stock up on compassion for others. I'd add compassion for ourselves, too. Kessler also nudges us toward finding meaning in this moment. Here, I got a little stuck. I wasn't ready to be pushed toward meaning. I was sad. I was scared. I was angry. And it is healthy and important to feel these things for some time. Grief is nonlinear, which is why we sometimes feel like we are being swung back and forth like a pendulum. Instead of seeking meaning, we might seek to identify and vocalize that for which we are grateful, our blessings. Gratitude for waking up in the morning, the ability to have our groceries delivered, access to computers when everyone in the house is suddenly in need of a screen, healthcare, keeping in mind the things that actually work and help us to be safe without minimizing the challenges and fear stalking our daily lives. This takes us away from a paradigm in which the thought of something good or positive is followed immediately by a giant but, to one in which our experiences are connected with the possibility of and. In this case, the conjunction but negates the first in the feeling in the first half of whatever sentence we're building, whereas and makes space for all. Not, this time has been so hard, but look at all that's also good. Rather, this time has been so hard, and I can see and lift up the good around me too. My family's life this summer was defined by no camp and no babysitter, 2 small children, and 2 full-time jobs. And it gave my parents a lot more time with our boys than they would ever have had, which was mostly good and also very exhausting for them. And we wish things were not as they were. And we are lucky. Other families have also reported related experiences amidst the real, life-altering, low places of this pandemic. More family time, home-cooked meals, reorganized cabinets, charitable giving, Shabbat participation, and more. Let me be clear about my message here. It's not one that says that the pandemic has been good because of all the sourdough bread and Marie Kondoed closets. This pandemic is a tragedy, and we have no choice but to adapt and survive, to create and recreate. Many of you have heard me gently adjust the statement when we go back to when we move forward to what we will create anew. We have new schedules and responsibilities in our homes. Here at Barnert, we have learned and then improved how to pray and love and study and connect with one another on a digital platform. We have transformed our work cultures and saved our environment much of the damage that typically accompanies our daily commutes. We are unable to unsee the disparities that have persisted in our country for decades, the generational injustices we must correct. So we are responding. We have grown more connected as a result of our ability to name our shared vulnerabilities. We have recreated. We won't be going back to what was. We will continue to recreate what can be, even from the deep depths of despair. The psalmist cries out, Mi ma'amakim keraticha Adonai, Adonai shim'a v'koli. I am in the deep, dark place. I am calling to you. Please hear my voice. With these words, we are drawn to survival, to relationship, to something different, born out of our need for repair. The Hebrew word we generally turn to when we speak of repair is tikkun, as in the core of our calling, tikkun olam, a phrase we usually translate as repair of our world. Rabbi Frischman shared a teaching with me recently about this word tikkun that reflects an essence of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, and an essential call to action for this moment. Tikkun, Kabbalah teaches, is not repair. It's reformation. Reformation in the sense of reforming, entering the higher, evolved form of the Spirit, which connects us to the all-encompassing divine. It's a process not by which we repair something broken, returning it to an earlier state, but rather one in which we evolve to become more spiritual, more elevated, more connected. And we don't do it to make ourselves feel better or happier, but because we have to. We are, each of us, living in service to each other and to the vital holy presence that connects us all. In Rabbi Frischman's words, once I'm reawakened to love, I have to serve. We saw that service to others not only to repair what is broken, but to reform what is possible in the life of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Justice Ginsburg embodied this tenet of our tradition. She taught us to build connections even in dissent. In her words, Jews carry an obligation to better the world carefully and steadily, to do one's part to make our communities, nation, and universe more humane, fairer, more just. And in speaking directly to us, she implored, fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. In this spirit of tikkun, in this new year, we make her memory a blessing when we acknowledge that which is broken, in need of reforming, and find partners to help us move from the depths of our grief into the possibility of the world as it can be. We mourn Justice Ginsburg this evening, Kol Nidre, the beginning of Yom Kippur, our day-long annual dress rehearsal for the day of our death, a day with no food or water, stripped of makeup or other adornments. We are meant to come face to face with our mortality. We do this in part by coming face to face with our mistakes and the ways that we have missed the mark in our individual living. And as we recite our collective confessions of sin, we reflect on our part in the communal misses this year. It's a day when we make space for our tears, for our regrets, for our grief. And then Ne'ilah comes tomorrow evening, the last service of Yom Kippur. The melodies move from minor to major. We offer a blessing for separation, and our focus turns back to living, to possibility, to reformation, to what we will create in the new year, and with whom we will build loving partnerships. We have found ourselves in deep places these last months, as individuals and as a nation. And this is not the first time our people, the Jewish people and the American people, have had to recreate. We built a new life in Eretz Yisrael after a long journey from Egypt. We created a whole new way of living as Jews, actually a totally different system of practicing Judaism, when the Second Temple was destroyed almost 2,000 years ago. Life in this country changed too, after Gettysburg, after Pearl Harbor, after September 11th, 2001. We still feel loss and grief with each of these moments. We mourn individuals, ways of living, the assurances that accompanied comfort. These losses could be enough to fill our hands. And in these same cupped, open hands, we can see that blessing can coexist. Without denying our apprehension, our fear of what this particular new year may bring, our openness to thinking and, rather than but, may enable us to make room for all of it. The psalmist anticipated our need for a shared language right now. Mi ma'amakim keraticha Adonai. From these deep, dark places, we call to you, O source of comfort and connection. We call to each other. We make space for sadness. We remind each other that despair and optimism need not be mutually exclusive. And to this cry of biblical proportion, Adonai shim'a v'koli, Adonai, hear my voice, we can respond. We hear each other. We meet each other in the depths. We take hands, begin our ascent, and recreate together.